Dr. Dre is in full effect, and I gotta tell y'all a little something. Eazy-E is down with us. MC Ring, you know he's down with us. DJ Yella is down with us. Arabian Prince, you know he's down with us. Tony A the Wizard is down with us. JJ Fag is down with us. Timmy T, you know he's down with us. DJ Pooh, boy, he's down with us. Toddy P and Spade, they're down with us. My boy Ice Cube, you know he's down with us. I like to mention, so pay attention to where I'm from, Compton, but the tapes are from the Roadium. My name is Dre, listen while I play. And by the way, I'm also down with N.W.A. Yo, Steve at the Roadium is down with us. Slanging funky tapes, it is a must. We're number one.
Welcome everybody once again to Roadium Radio, episode 9, with my very good friend here. But before I introduce her, I want to thank the people that have been ordering or live streaming the, should I say, the documentary, the DOCUMIXERY actually. So far, so good. No complaints. I've received nothing but praise, and people are really enjoying it. It's been very educational from what many people have told me. Well, what we set out to do was do a documentary, which we call a DOCUMIXERY, about Steve YANO, the swamp meat vendor from the city of Whittier, a Japanese man, a good friend of mine, older brother, and a father figure, if you will. And I didn't want his name to get lost in West Coast hip hop history, so I set out to do this DOCUMIXERY. And for those that, and it's finally out, honestly, I'm thankful that it is. For those that have ordered it and you have unlimited streaming, many of you guys have really enjoyed it. And I get all the positive feedback. I haven't gotten not one negative feedback yet. Everybody really enjoys it. Somebody just asked me, why did it take so long? Because I wanted to make sure that it was done right and that everybody would enjoy it. I had one guy tell me this. He said, I know it was 3 hours long. He said, but I wanted more. And honestly, that's like my pay. So once again, it's barely the third day that it's been out. It was released Monday, and it's available now at documixery.com. Once again, I just want to say that many people have been DMing me and messaging me on Facebook. And please do not DM me or message me on Facebook asking me to come on the show or listen to my music. I don't listen or read those messages, and I'll tell you why. Because I get so many. There is a Roadium Radio Gmail that you can email all your suggestions, your comments. If you want to see somebody interviewed here, email us your music. I do not listen to music, so please, I'm trying to be nice. Do not send me your music through DM or through Facebook Messenger. I don't read those messages. RoadiumRadio@gmail. Send it all there, and we'll get to it in a timely manner and get back to you as well. So without further ado, I want to introduce someone that I've been knowing since I've been a teenager. I met her through Steve YANO, may rest in peace. And we have been friends for the longest, and I'm thankful to have friends. You know, I've said it once before that I can count on my friends in one hand and have fingers left over, and she's one of them. Now, for all you people who may not know who she is before I introduce her, I always like to say, if you don't know who Violet Brown is, you don't belong in this music industry. That's just me. Without further ado, the godmother of hip hop, Violet Brown, thank you for coming.
I'm excited to be here.
Well, I was excited. I actually even sat down with John and I was like, you know what, dude, there is so much to cover with her. There's so much history, because this is a woman that has been there since the beginning of hip hop, since the beginning. Mm-hmm. So there's so much that I wanted to cover and so much that I wanted to ask. But just like hip hop had a beginning, Violet had a beginning. So my question to you starts, where is Violet Brown from? Where were you born? Where were you raised?
I was born in Inglewood, California. And I was not in Inglewood for very long. We moved out to Lawndale. So I went to Lawndale schools, Lawndale High School, all of that. I always collected records as a kid. From the time I was About 5 years old, I loved music and I started collecting singles. Every little penny that I would get, I would go buy more singles all the time. My dad was a drinker. My mom would say, hey, go to the store with your dad so he won't get nothing to drink. So I would go with him to the store. He would say, hey, you want some records? And I would go, yeah. He would, here, take this. And so we would go to little places, Clark's Drug, places like that, because they had a record department in there.
Yes.
So I would go out, buy the records there, come home with all these new records. My mom would say, did you get anything to drink? And I'd say, yeah, and I got my records. Every
Wow.
time that would
Wow.
happen. But I collected these, avid record collector, singles mainly. And up until about the time I was 12 years old, I had tons of records at this point. And I started going to the Roadium swap meet too as a kid. And
Before we get there,
okay.
what elementary school did you attend?
Billy Mitchell in
Billy
Lawndale.
What junior high school?
Jane Addams,
Jane Addams, high school now.
Lawndale.
Lawndale. Any sports in high school?
Softball, but I was very involved in theater, the plays. I was in a band. I played guitar in a band, sang in a band. So I did that. But it was all about my record collection.
Right.
From junior high all through high school, if there was a dance or a party, it was my records that were being played,
You said since you were 5 years old, you've been collecting records. Now, with these albums, 12 inches, 45s?
45s.
45. Now,
Started as.
Now, what would a 45 have gone for back then?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. Back in the day, you could buy these, they were little packages of singles. And
Okay.
often you didn't know what was in them. A pack of 10 for $1. So, and sometimes there would be great ones in there and sometimes some weird stuff too. But I don't remember exactly what one single costs, but it had to be super cheap because albums, I think, were $2.99 or something like that back in the day.
Wow.
I ran a records. Later on, I was running a warehouse record store, and painted on the window at the time was $2.96 for albums.
$2.96.
Yeah.
You would have happened to have one of those records with the price tag still on it. Do you?
Probably somewhere in my collection.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Do you remember at all, maybe not your first record, but maybe some of the records that you first started buying maybe when you were 5, 6, 7, 8 years old?
A guy named Shorty Long, Function at the Junction, The Twist, all those kind of
Right.
records. I grew up on my parents' best friends was a black family who lived in Compton. And every summer, I would spend my summers with them. So I would always come back knowing all of the music, all the stuff that they were listening to. And that was all very important to me, all those kind of songs.
Right.
So, a lot of James Brown, stuff like that.
So would you say your influence and music selection when you bought records came from that family?
A lot of it came from that family, yeah.
Okay. See, my dad, he played a lot of 45s, a lot of 78 records, a lot of albums, mostly Spanish. And then when he did play some English, it would be like Chubby Checkers. It would be a Beach Boys, stuff like that, And so I really saw my dad play records because we used to have that big old stereo,
Yeah.
So I think I still remember as a kid, the first song that I ever heard him play, he took it out of the 45 sleeve and he put it on. It was the Monster Mash, And as a little kid, I'm hearing all these creepy sounds. So I'm envisioning it like, what the hell is that? But my first record that I ever received, I was about 11 years old, and it was a Kiss album. It was Love Gun album.
Okay.
I just loved Kiss. They had the makeup and everything. They kind of looked like Mexican wrestlers, so I was drawn to that. But now I was 11 years old. You were 5. Wow. What do you think it was, Violet, that just drew you to music that you felt I got to buy records.
My mom was always into music. She played stand-up bass, and she played on a show sometimes called Town Hall Party, which was kind of more like country music.
Yes.
So I grew up with listening to a lot of that. I think I really rebelled against it, you know, and because there was just so much of it, you know, and so I started listening to other things. And then when I became close with this family, big shout out there to Gloria and Rufus McClendon. I would love to find them to this day. So if anybody knows them, the McClendons from Compton, I'm looking for them. But, you know, I would always come back from the summer. I would know all the new dances. I would have all the new music. You know, I would know what was up. And I just really loved it so much because there was a lot of music going on in that family, you know. And so, you know, it just really got me to collecting more and more singles.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, around what time, because you had mentioned earlier that there were school dances, if I'm correct, and they were using your records.
Yeah.
How did that come about? Were these like noon dances, after school dances?
Yeah, after school dances. And then if anybody had like a little house party, birthday parties, things like that, they always knew that they could call on me that I would have the records, you know.
Wow.
And so it was just playing records. It wasn't like spinning, you know,
Right.
mixing, just playing the records. But, you know, if you know music and you know what makes people move, even if you're not spinning the records, if you're not mixing, you're just playing the record, at least, you know, you were playing good stuff and people would get up and dance and have a good time.
Yes,
So,
yes.
And that kind of led me later on to DJing and all that too.
Yeah.
So,
Now, before we get to your DJing, let me share with you this. And my brother, I only had a few records, but we were buying them from Steve YANO at the Vermont swap meets when it was across the street from Ascot. And my brother would always buy records. So one day at my junior high school, they announced that they were looking for a DJ to DJ noon dances. I was in 8th grade at the time, was probably about 12 years old. I had never DJ'd before, I'll be honest with you, but I knew what people like to dance to because my brother DJ'd at a club. So I just went up to him and I said, yeah, I know how to DJ. And I lied, you know, and he said, well, this is our equipment. They had one turntable, a big old mixer with a round fader and a cassette deck. So right away I thought, okay, all my records, I got to transfer them to cassette and I take my set of records. So when this song ends, I'll play this one. Put my, plug the headphones into this, cue up the cassette deck, and then press stop and then start this one again. So that was my first noon dance. And to be quite honest with you, I was nervous as hell. Do you still remember when you played in front of people?
yes. And my experience was really out there because later on, I was working for a company called Knee-High Record Distributors.
Okay.
And we actually sold records we were the distributor for all the big record stores, chains.
Wow.
There used to be little chain stores, White Front, Zodi's, all those kind of companies that they had, and Sears, May Company. They all had record departments.
Yes.
And they would come and buy their records from Knee-High Record Distributors, and I worked for them. So, and I was their singles buyer, and we also had a chain called Peaches Records that I bought for them as well. So I was supplying records to all these different places all around the country, throughout the country, and it was all genres. So I had to know like everything. I had to know the hot country records that was happening in Texas, the, you know, blues, you know, anything that was going on, I had to be on top of it.
Yes.
So I always got a lot of promos from all the record labels. So at this point, I had tons, and I still loved singles, and singles were still important back then. So one day I was coming home from work, and I'm coming up in LA here, Stalker and La Brea. I'm coming up La Brea near Stalker,
Yes.
and I get a flat tire. So, and the place where I was working was on Jefferson. So I pull over, and there wasn't cell phones and things like that at the time.
Right.
So I get out of the car and I look, where can I go use a phone? And I see a bar on the corner. It looks like a bar. So I go up and I go in. I said, hey, can I use your phone? You know, my car broke down, but I didn't want to leave my records in the car, so I brought the case with me. I was carrying it.
Right.
So the guy goes, yeah, you can use a phone. And, you know, he was African American, and a few other people in there were in there, and it was all black. And so they're looking at me and they go, "What's in that box?" And I go, "Oh, it's records." And they go, "Records?" And I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "Let me see." So I opened it up. And he's going, "Wow, you have a lot of records." He goes, "Can I look through them?" And I said, "Sure." He goes, "How come you have so many records?" And I go, "Well," I said, "I'm a buyer for this place." And I go, "I was just taking them home with me." And I said, "I get a lot of promos from record labels." He goes, "You got all kinds of new stuff here." And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "What's this?" And he was pulling out things. I go, "Oh, that'll be out like in a month or so."
Wow.
Or whatever. And he goes, "Wow, I can't believe you have all this stuff."
Yes.
So he goes, "You should bring your records and come back here at night." And I said, "Why? What happens here at night?" And it looked like a bar, a club, or
Right.
whatever. He goes, we have dancing here at night. You should bring these records. He goes, you have all kinds of records that we would want to hear. So I said, "Well, maybe I'll do that sometime." And he goes, "No, really, you need to come back." So my brother came, fixed the tire, took off, but I kept thinking about that place and I didn't know anything about it. It was called the Summit, I found out later, and it was right at the top of Stocker and La Brea. And so I went back there one night on a weekend, and I knew the guy, and he was the manager or owner, I think, at the time. So I went in, and there was not one white person in the whole place, and they're looking at me, and he goes, "You got to come up here to the DJ booth." So he takes me up, introduces me to the DJ, and he had told me to bring my records, so I brought records with me. So we go up in the DJ booth, and the guy goes, he goes, "Let me see what you got." And he goes, "Wow." So that was the first time that I was ever in a DJ booth with somebody looking out on the dance floor. And believe you me, they were like staring at me like, "What the hell? What is she doing here?" or whatever. So,
of course.
Yeah. So, he started saying, he gave my name out. He said she brought in some records tonight, that sort of thing. And they saw, I guess I was pretty cool. I had good music because I really had some good stuff that I brought there. So I went back there a few more times. I was watching him DJ, and then I kind of wanted to do it myself,
Now, if you can remember, because to me, for DJs and DJ fans out there, if you can remember, what kind of setup that they have? Did they have 2 turntables and a mixer?
It was 2 turntables and a mixer.
Do you remember what time?
No, but I know it was some old janky shit. I mean, really.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, because I remember my first pair of turntables, I remember I dropped a needle and it will skip like this.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh shit." So, but that's what we had.
Yeah. And I've been in DJ booths where, you just couldn't move because it was going to skip, and I've been on things where I had to put coins on the thing, to lay it down a little bit, all of that.
And you said something that to me stood out, because you said, "I brought my records." We had to take our records because somebody would steal them, or if they were in the heat, they would warp.
Yes.
They would warp.
And that's why I had them with me.
And this generation of younger DJs possibly didn't know that or wouldn't know that because they possibly never had records. Everything's been downloads, you know. So, and then you said, "Do you guys have a phone?"
Yeah.
Today, everybody has a phone. So
Yeah.
you brought back a lot of memories, especially when you said Zodi's, because Zodi's was actually like my second job. My first job was working with Steve as 11, and then I was a teenager working at Zodi's.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, I was a huge record collector. I ended up, and I almost even feel bad announcing this, but a few years ago, I sold all my records.
Oh, wow.
Somebody offered me the right price. And he literally begged me. At first, he offered me 10, and then he went up 11, 12, 1,000. And then I just said, "No, I can't." And then it went up to 15, and he had it cash.
Wow.
So I thought long and hard about it, and I said, "Come back tomorrow." And if he's listening, he'll probably get mad at me because I cherry picked some stuff, and I took them out, and I said, "Take them all." And he was taking them back to Japan.
Wow.
So, but, and it's funny because I'm thinking to myself, okay, I got Steve YANO. I can always get his record collection. Steve's like, "Hell no, I ain't selling mine."
Yeah.
But Steve was the shit, man.
There comes a time where you just don't have the space anymore.
I know.
Or you don't want to pay storage anymore or that sort of thing.
Well, I had them all up against this wall. All up against these walls, and they were real high. Over 60 crates, easy. And I knew where everything was, my classic rock, my oldies, everything, But after a while, I was like, you know what? I'll tell you what I did take out. I took out my ultimate breaks and beats. That's what I took,
Smart.
and I still have them.
Yeah.
So I still have those. Now, Knee High Records, did you have a job before that at any time?
Yes, I did. Well, First of all, it was at the Roadium swap meet when I was 12 years old.
Wow.
I would hang out at the swap meet because my parents sold stuff out there, and I was running around to all the different booths and everything. And there was a guy that sold 4 and 8-track tapes. So this is before cassettes.
Right.
There was 4 and 8-track tapes.
Wow.
And I asked them if I could work for them if they needed any help, because all the kids would run around to the different booths at the swap meet and say, you need any help, you need any help?
Yes.
So I asked these people, you need any help? And they're looking at me, and I said, I really know music. And they go, what? And I was like, yeah, I really know music, and I want to work.
Yes.
So they said, okay, next weekend get here at 6 a.m. in the morning. So I said, okay. So I went there 6 a.m. in the morning. I worked on a Saturday. They told me to come back on the Sunday. I think I was there from 6 till like 4:30 or something when they tore down. I did that like several weekends in a row, and I was telling them some of the hot stuff, because back then it wasn't illegal to straight up copy an album. So they would copy on 4 or 8-track a Beatles album or
Wow.
James Brown or whatever. It was not illegal, I think, until like 72. So, and they were making compilations. So they were tape 1, 2, numbered like that. So I started telling them the songs to put on their compilations. And they were putting them on, and then they started selling really well. And they were wholesaling to all these different swap meet people all over the country. Yeah. was buying from them. I didn't know this at the time. I thought they just had a little store, because they had a little store in Lawndale too, which I found out about later. And then they had the swap meet thing that was going on. So I started telling them which ones to put on. They sold really well. And then during the week, they would say, hey, after school, do you want to come over to Carson, to where we live, and, and work with us over there a little bit? So I said, okay. So I go over to this house in Carson, and it had a lot of bedrooms, no beds in it. It was all recording equipment, like everywhere. They were making these tapes, sending them out, like big time. I didn't even know how big this business was that they had. And they were paying me $20 a day at the swap meet, and I felt that I was rich, back then. I was 12 years old, know, and I have a job. So I did that all the way up until I was 15 years old. So I'd been with them for 3 years every weekend. And they finally said, hey, our business is really good. We want to get rid of our little store in Lawndale. And it was called R&S Tape Town. That was the name of it. And they said, we want to get rid of it. Why don't you take it over? And then you just pay us at the end of the week for any of the tapes that you sold, like on consignment.
Now, around how old were you around this time now? 12
to 15.
And they wanted you to run it?
Yeah, they gave me the store. I was 15 when I took over the store, and I was still in high school.
Okay, let me stop you right there, because I have to say something. See, today we have things on social media that say GoFundMe. Mm-hmm. See, back then that was the original GoFundMe. You would go, do you guys need any help? Mm-hmm. Okay. I hope I'm wrong, but kids today don't really do that. Okay.
No.
Then our social media was the swap meet.
Right.
We didn't have, MySpace, Twitter, or whatever.
Right.
Today kids can DM, tweet, message, poke, whatever, but can't hold a conversation.
Right.
That's why I miss those days.
Yeah.
That's why I miss those days.
Yeah.
So you take over this store.
So I take over the store, and I was always a pretty popular kid in school because I had all the records for the parties, and I was in a band, and I was in the plays and things like that. So I had like a built-in, customers, audience that, once I told them, hey, I have this store now, flyers here to the kids at school, come to my store, which I had to open after I got out of school. So it didn't open up till like 3 or 4 in the afternoon. And then I would be in there till like 8 o'clock at night or something. So all the kids started coming. And I remember it was only my second week of being open. And after all the bills were paid, the consignment was paid for them for the week and everything, I had made $800. And mind you, this store, the rent back then was $50 a month. $50 a month. There was a little hole in the wall, and I don't know how many square feet, maybe like 400 or 500 square feet or something, but $50 a month. And I started making all this money, you know, because all the kids would come. Then I started going, okay, well, on Friday nights, we should do jam sessions in here. People can bring their instruments and things like that and play. So I was doing things like that, you know, to draw more attention. The store started making more money. And I started begging my mom, please, you know, I really need to like quit high school because, you know, I'm making so much money. She was like, you're not quitting high school, you know? And I said, I'm making so much money. You know, I thought I was rich, you know.
Right.
Well, it kind of was a lot of money back then for, you know, to have week after week going 800, 1,000, you know, whatever it was.
That's a hell of a lot of money.
You know, so I was like, please, you know. And so I don't know how I conned her into this, but she let me quit high school. So then I just did the store and 7 days a week pretty much doing the store, staying open late, all of that. And then when I became 18, they cut off you couldn't sell those types of tapes anymore. It was copyright laws were being like really.
What we would call bootlegs.
Yes.
I guess. Okay.
Yeah, it was basically bootlegs.
Okay.
You know, and then it became a crackdown. So we had to get rid of the tapes. I couldn't sell those types of tapes anymore. So I started investing in, you know, buying, you know, product that was legal or whatever.
Yes.
So of course, a lot of the business went away with music, but I didn't want to get rid of my store. So back in the day, the thing that was really popular was head shops. So I had already started investing in head shop gear, you know, pipes, posters, lights, like black lights, strobe lights, tie-dye shirts, you know, candles, all that kind of hippie shit, you know. And so that started doing well, that portion of the business. And I remember the shop came open next door and it was going to be another $50 for this little place next door. So I rented that one, and then we built like a light showroom in between the two stores where you would go in and it would be all the lights and posters and things like that. And so when the music shop shut down, we just had the head shop going. And so my mom would come in there sometimes and work with me. And it was called Mrs. Natural's Nickel Bag. And the reason why we called it Mrs. Natural, because Mr. Natural, the keep on trucking dude from R. Crumb Comics, was the big thing, and the Zigzag Man and all that. So I had a guy from North High School come and paint the outside of my store, and he did all the Zap comic characters, Zigzag Man, Keep on Trucking Dude. It was all painted on the outside of the store. So
just to ask, do you still have possibly any pictures of
Yeah,
them?
I do.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah, and when we take a break, I'll bring in that magazine too, because there might be something in there with it. But that store, you know, was doing really well with the head shop stuff and not so much music anymore, but I still wanted to work in music. So I had my mom run the head shop, and I said, I'm going to go get a job in music. So I went to the popular record store at the time. It was called Wallach's Music City.
Okay.
And they were the big record chain before Tower Records. And they had in stores, like the Beatles would come and shop in their store. If a big celebrity was in town, they would come and shop at Wallach's Music City, especially the one in Hollywood, Hollywood and Vine. It was like a big
You didn't happen to
landmark.
catch the Beatles when they got there, did you?
No.
Okay.
So anyway, I kept going to this record store, asking the manager if I could get a job there. And he would say, I don't hire kids. And I said, I've already had my own record store. I know the music. And he goes, I'm sorry, but I don't hire kids. And I was about 18 maybe at that time. And he called that a kid, you know. So, and he wouldn't really give me the time of day. He said, no, or whatever, kind of pushing me away. And so I finally said to him, I go, you want to play some music trivia? And he was like, yeah, let's go for it. And so then we started like, you know,
going back and forth.
And he saw that I really knew what I was talking about records. And so he put me on in the store. Wow. So I was with them about a year, and I was doing really well. He gave me the 45, the singles department, and I was doing really well. And the main office caught wind of me, so they came down and got to know me. And after 1 year, they took me, the distributor took me to knee-high record distributors to buy for that distribution company. So then I was buying for everybody.
We're going to get back to that. I want to press pause like a cassette right there. We're going to take a little break.
Okay.
Because so far, we've been knowing each other for a long time, Violet, but when I talk to you, it's always an honor and a pleasure, and I've just been blown away because I love your story. So you guys, once again, please text somebody, call somebody, beep somebody. We got the godmother of hip hop here in the building, Roadium Radio. Once again, we're gonna go to a commercial. We'll be back in about 10 minutes. Please call somebody, let them know that Violet Brown is here. And we're gonna continue this conversation in a moment. Thank everybody that has logged in, and we got more for you guys, so thank you.
Hey, what you think of that Tony A mixtape?
Oh, that Tony A mixtape, the Roadium tape? No, that's back in the days. That's when Cube and them got started. The first time I ever heard of High C. Boy, busting fresh ass rats, freestyle shit. That's back in the days. We're right here at my homie skateboard shop with Tony A, the mixtape, the Roadium mixtape. It's a rap. That's that real mixing. It wasn't back in the days like all these, I got these artists right here rapping. It was real mixing, man. Tony A, the Roadium tape, man. Good looking out for that, man. It got me through a lot of shit. Tony A, what's up from Boyle Heights all the way to Wilmington, baby? We got you, yeah. Nothing but one love, baby, yeah.
Yo, man, you know what this is? This is 5-0. The original Roadium mixtape by motherfucking Tony A the Wizard, G. Check this shit out.
That's that heat right there. Word up.
Hey. DJ C, DJ The Gav, Ice Cube, motherfucking Dr. Dre.
Yo, Dr. Dre, Tony A the Wizard mixtapes. Couldn't wait to get our hands on that shit. Bump that shit, get the chills on those fucking hot mixtapes. Ain't nothing like it. That's fucking legendary. LA like a bug.
Word, Tony A's on the mix.
What's up, y'all? It's your man DJ M3 here to talk about the Roadium mixtape and kind of the pioneer of the mixtape done by my man Tony A. I met Tony A several years ago. I mean, listen, I've known of him. I knew who he was. He was a big influence in kind of the way I DJ'd and the way I constructed my mixtapes through a 4-track or an 8-track. And he was definitely a big influence in that sense. You know, the first time I listened to a Roadium mixtape, I was just kind of blown away and just so intrigued with the way it was put together. You know, not only from a cutting and a scratching standpoint, but just the way it was constructed and the way it was kind of organized, very precise. You know, the cuts and the scratches were super clean. You know, along with the blending in there. You know, it definitely took it to another level with adding like really influential artists that we know today, DJ Quick, N.W.A, Ice Cube, you know, so it was definitely a game changer when it came to mixtapes. And, you know, I don't think we've ever seen in our generation or this new generation of today, I don't think we've ever seen a mixtape quite like the Roadium mixtape because of the way it was produced, right? And a lot of the credit goes to, you know, obviously Steve YANO, but more importantly to Tony A, because he was the one that pretty much mostly produced you know, those mixtapes with a 4-track recorder, right? No less. You know, when you have a 4-track, you're kind of limited to, you know, how many layers you can put on your mix. You know, I was fortunate enough to use a 4-track recorder and also an 8-track digital recorder. And obviously the 8-track digital recorder was definitely easier because you could layer a lot more sounds. But you know, for Tony to come in and do his mixes on a 4-track and lay those tracks down so cleanly and so seamlessly, it was pretty amazing. So, you know, definitely a big influence on kind of you know, how I did my mixtapes, and I definitely bit a lot of the stuff that he did, but I you know, my mixtapes were definitely, you know, constructed after Tony's style, and but I don't think anybody did it better than Tony, because Tony was just the master at that, and you know, listening to all of the Roadium mixtapes, you know, kind of growing up while I was DJing, you know, had a big impact on the way that I did my mixes and things like that, and music selection and things like that. So it was definitely a game changer for me in terms of, you know, taking my DJ game to the next level. Obviously I'm retired now, but you know, definitely can appreciate, you know, kind of the history behind the mixtape, right? And I think it would be safe to say that this is probably the original mixtape, because now mixtapes are more of, you know, a hype man behind it with maybe a beat and then, you know, all kinds of rappers, but there really wasn't the creativity when it came to putting together a mixtape, you know, layering sounds, layering beats, different scratches, adding different scratches, telling a story with the chops that you did with your cuts, transitioning into the next song. That was a big thing back then, and you needed to be skillful to be able to do that. And Tony was definitely perfected that art, and he took it to another level. So Tony A, we salute you, and you know, congratulations on this documentary. Definitely something that was needed to kind of tell the story of what it was like back in the day, and kind of where we get our roots in terms of mixing and mixtapes, right? But definitely the mixtapes of those days, of the Roadium days, definitely is steps and notches above what the mixtapes are of today. So I just think that mixtapes today are extremely boring. That's why I'll take a listen, but they're definitely not as intriguing as Tony's Roadium mixtapes. So yeah, I mean, you know, it was definitely a game changer for me when it came to DJing. But you know, shout to my man DG. He was actually the one that introduced me to Tony, you know, years and years ago, and you know, blessed to know him. Tony, shout out. You did your thing, my man. And actually, I think you should come out with another mixtape, man. I mean, what's stopping you? You know, you obviously, I'm pretty sure you still got the skills on the turntables and the fader. So let's get it started again, man. I'd love to see another Roadium mixtape, and yo, I would love to collaborate with you on that too. So you know, if you want to do that, I'd be more than happy to, you know, kind of join in the mix, right? So but yeah, congratulations again. Shout out Roadium mixtapes, RIP Steve YANO. Shout out to my man DG, and you know, salute Tony A, and I'm out. Peace.
Ice Cube getting dumb at the Roadium with the funky drum, and you know my man Steve can get some. With a fool like Tony A when he plays stupid dope shit by N.W.A. You wanna spray? Dumb motherfuckers, no doubt. And sucker DJ, get the fuck out. Tony A.
What did you say your name was? What did you say your name?
Tony A. I have won 1 million battles.
Lights, cameras, action, sound. Give me that mic, I'm about to go down.
Thinking of a master plan.
This story's funny. I met this girl and she had money.
Just do 1 2 1 2. Right about now, Eazy-E and Dr. Dre's in the motherfucking house.
Times are getting crazy, it's really hard to choose it. The Roadium's a spot to get funky, fresh music. Easy motherfucking E and my homeboy Dr. Dre. MC Ren is in effect, and you know we don't play. The Roadium is hidden, but you know you can't leave until you get a deaf ass tape from Steve. Oh Steve, oh Steve, oh Steve, just give me just one more tape. Oh Steve, oh Steve, oh Steve, just give me just one more tape. Oh Steve, oh Steve, oh Steve, just give me just one more tape. Oh Steve, oh Steve, oh Steve, just give me just one more tape.
Yeah, man, I came all the way down to the Roadium swap meet, man, to pick up one of the N.W.A tapes, man. And I talked to homeboy Steve down there, man, and he said I'm fresh out of tapes, man. How the fuck you fresh out of tapes, man? He said cause they selling like hotcakes and shit, man.
Got my man throwing down.
Hey mom, what's for dinner?
Man, like the N.W.A. and Eazy-E music hit the Roadium Swap Meet mixtapes first. Like when we dropped our records, man, it was like, it was cool putting your records out, but even though people knew who Dre was and I was and Cube and Yella before, they didn't really know who Eazy was. But not until, you know, Boys in the Hood and some of that, you know, Fat Girl and LA is the Place, that stuff hit the mixtapes, man. That's what kind of put it out there for people to know, like, what is this Eazy-E? What is this N.W.A. thing? So I think it was like a big, big push.
The Roadium Swap Meet mixtapes had a huge impact on hip-hop and the hip-hop culture because it was different. And, you know, wasn't nobody doing it like that. You know, you had New York, they was doing mixtapes, but, you know, you had N.W.A. who was saying whatever the fuck they wanted to say. Motherfuckers wasn't doing that shit, speaking how they wanted to speak, you know, and what that did was open up a lane for what they call gangster rap today and the hip-hop culture. And it really opened up lanes for you know, pretty much for the West Coast gangster shit to get out. And nobody else was doing that, and it was just different. And people were scared to say what they wanted to say. And you know, that buzz came from Steve at the Roadium Swap Meet, you know, working with Dre and Easy and created a whole plethora of good music and it created a lot of lanes and opened up a lot of lanes from artists like myself to be able to come out. You know, I'm part of the tree. I'm a branch on the tree that Dre and Easy started, you know, and then on my branch you got Snoop, the Dog Pound, 50 Cent, Eminem, and all of those guys. You know, that's all on my branch, the Chronic. And that's what it created, man.
Once again, everybody, thank you for tuning in. We are having an awesome conversation here. You know, I created this platform here inspired by Steve YANO at the Roadium Swap Meet, how he, at his stand, give everybody a voice, everybody a platform. And what we do here is not so much of an interview, but it's more of a conversation so that the audience can learn and glean from what we are sharing here, especially when it comes to an awesome woman like Violet Brown, the godmother of hip hop, and we are back with her. Once again, thank you, Violet, for being here. It is truly an honor and a pleasure. We've been knowing each other for years, but every time I get together with you, I am always learning something because I want to learn. You know, one of the things that I tell a lot of these younger generations is you never arrive at learning. You got to always continue to learn. Learn from those that have already been through the door, if you will. Mm-hmm. You know, so now you are distributor, if I'm correct.
Yep.
Okay. And at what point, how soon after that did you start being possibly a consultant for record labels?
Well, after leaving Knee High Record Distributors, I actually went to Warehouse Music. And
okay.
Because it was located in the South Bay, I heard there was a record job, a company in the South Bay where I lived, and I was going kind of far from the South Bay to Jefferson to this job. So I went to check out, it was Warehouse Entertainment. It was called Integrity Entertainment was the main office. So I went in there and got a job with them, and they sent me directly into one of their stores. They said, oh, you want to start? Okay, you can go to the store. It's right down the road, not too far. It was in Long Beach where they sent me. So they said, you can be the assistant manager. And I was like, okay, I don't know anything about your stores or anything yet, other than the fact I had bought a record at a warehouse store years ago, previous, and I really didn't like the chain that much. But I was like, okay, I'll go check it out or whatever. So I went and I worked in this store for a while, and then I just kept moving through the ranks to eventually managing the #1 store in the chain, then managing the #1 urban store at La Brea and Rodeo, coming into the main office as an urban music buyer, where I had a lot of success in that position, you know, because I was picking the music that would go on the shelves of all of our stores. And we were a really good chain when it came to urban music. And I started doing things like a block party in the back of our store at La Brea and Rodeo, where in June, Black Music Month, back then it really was called Black Music Month, and it was called Black Music. On the radio, it was called Black Music. BRE was Black Radio, you know, magazines and all that.
Wow.
So it wouldn't happen in this day and time. But anyway, so I started doing these like block parties, we called them, in the back of the parking lot. I went out, I handpicked vendors to come and sell stuff. I didn't charge them to sell their stuff, but I wanted to handpick and choose the right ones that I wanted. So they would come, set up a little booth, sell their stuff. I set up stages, and I would have people perform. So the record labels would bring whoever the hot artists were at the time. You know, a lot of big artists came and performed.
Who, name us a few.
Tina Marie, Ice-T, you know, N.W.A. would come through, Jodeci.
You know what this reminds me of? Almost like a Beats swap meet. Are you familiar with the Beats?
Yeah.
That's kind of what it sounds like.
Yeah. I mean, we had like whoever was hot at the time, they would come through that year, you know, I would have game booths for the kids in the neighborhood. It was all free. And at first they said, oh, this can't happen here, because across the street from my store was an area that they called the jungle. So over there, you know, there's a lot of stuff happening over there, a lot of drugs being sold, all that over there, you know. So they were really worried about something being free, you know, and with all these rappers and things like that, Tone Loc, you know, all these different rappers were coming through, Young MC, all that. And so, you know, we did that like every single June. And then I started doing rap competitions. So we were doing, you know, people would submit tapes. I would choose the top 10, and then they would perform live. And I remember one time in the back parking lot, my panel who was judging the top 10, it was Ice-T, Tone Loc, Eazy-E, MC Hammer, Greg Mack from K-Day, Russ Parr, and
from Bobby Jimmy.
Yes, and there was one other big person I just can't remember right now, but these were the judges that were there, you know, judging, and they were sitting right at a table where any kid in the neighborhood could just see their favorite rap star right there, you know.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, just to ask, since I'm a collector, would you happen to have pictures or video of any of this stuff?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I had a guy that used to film my videos, and his name is Tim Story, so he does all big films now. He's winning awards, like gigantic films, and he's a big director now, you know, but he used to come and film, you know, the day pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm going to ask you something. We're going to back up a little bit to the origins, or should I say the beginning of hip hop.
Mm-hmm.
When hip hop first started taking off, since you were in the industry, what were some of the things that were going around? I'll tell you what my brothers would say when hip hop first started to come up. Of course, the first song that I heard was Sugar Hill Gang, and then I heard Blondie rap on Rapture.
Yeah.
And my brothers, because I got 5 older brothers, they all used to say, "Oh, it's a fad. It's going to fade out. You know, it's only in for a little bit." that's what they all used to say.
Yeah.
But I loved it. I truly, truly loved it. I almost felt like, okay, this is music for me now. Youngsters. You know, what were some of the things that you were hearing when hip hop first started to bloom?
A fad, the same kind of stuff. It wouldn't be around. It wasn't real music.
Yeah.
There wasn't any talent. There wasn't any real talent. A lot of the R&B type people, just absolutely hated it. It's only going to be around. Another year and it's gone.
Yeah.
Here we are, 45 or more years later.
Yeah. And people are still saying
just
it's
as big as ever.
Yes. Around the world.
Around the world, everywhere, and in pop culture everywhere, hip hop.
Yes.
You see it in clothing, you see it in art, you see it on TV, you see it sitcoms, everything.
You even got athletes rapping.
Yeah.
Now,
that was not a great idea, by the way.
Now, what, if anything, would you say? Because I have a record that I can say, hip hop obviously changed my life, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But
and mine.
What was that one song, maybe that one artist that you heard and you said, oh, shit, that's my shit right there?
Planet Rock.
Say it again, one more time.
Planet Rock.
Planet Rock.
Yes.
Do you remember where you were when you first heard it?
You know what? I don't remember where I was when I first heard it. Wow. But I know that when I heard it, time stopped and I was like, I got to get that record. Yes. I got to have that record.
Yes.
And I was working for Warehouse Records, but we didn't have that record. And I was like, where is this record? How do I get this record? And maybe it was on I don't know if it was on K-Day that I heard it. I don't remember, but I just remember hearing it and losing my mind over it. I had to have it. So I started calling around everywhere trying to find this record. I was like, well, maybe VIP has it. Let me call VIP. Let me find this record. And then, of course, Steve YANO. Yeah. I knew that he would have that record. Wow. So, yeah.
Wow. Okay. Here's my story. Steve's already taken me to Audio Achievements where N.W.A is recording.
Yeah, that was right in Torrance, right where Warehouse was. So I would run into them at the Mexican restaurant.
La Capilla.
Yeah, La Capilla.
Yeah, that's right. Well, one day I couldn't go that day and they were mixing it down, okay? My mom didn't let me go. I had a very strict Mexican mother that, shit, if I went to the liquor store, I better hurry up or you better go with somebody type of deal. And I remember I slept in the living room because I had shared the room with like 3 other brothers and there was only 2 beds. Our house was like ghetto as fuck. Seriously, one of our windows was broken and there was a hole in one of them. Okay, so we would just put a piece of cardboard. So my mom and my dad were asleep and I had my boombox and some old beat up ass headphones that you kind of had to mix so you can hear both, headphones. So I'm laying there and I'm waiting on Steve to come. I said, don't call me, you'll wake up my whole family. So he finally pulls up and I see the van pull up. He comes up and I take out that piece of cardboard and he sticks his hand through the broken window and he goes, here you go. He said, don't dub that tape for nobody. And I said, okay. So he left. I put the cassette in the boombox, put the headphones in, put them on. I grabbed my furry Mexican blanket and I pressed play. And it was the N.W.A. Straight Outta Compton album and it changed my life, man.
Wow.
Honestly, it changed my life.
It was a game changer. Yeah.
Yes. And that's why I said, somebody asked, what's one of your favorite albums of all time? I said that one because it changed me. And that album changed everything. And then about, I think a couple of months later, because they were released the same year, Eazy-E's album came out. And in the intro, as soon as I heard him go, I was like, oh shit, that shit's hard.
Yeah.
And then when I heard easily I approach the microphone. Man.
Yeah.
I get the chills right now just talking about it.
As a DJ, because I had started DJing in clubs, as we talked about earlier. Yes. And, if you're DJing in clubs and the weekend comes, if you don't have the new shit, you ain't shit. You got to have it. So everybody would hit up Steve YANO for the new 12-inch singles. Like, I could get a lot of that stuff being a buyer,
Right.
but there was a lot of stuff that came out of New York and things like that Steve was able to get,
Yes.
that we got later as buyers or whatever, maybe a month later or something, I was able to get
Yes.
it in my stores, but Steve had the hot stuff. And everybody knew that Steve had this stuff, and Dre was one of those people that knew that you had to go there and get
Yes.
that stuff. So as soon as he would open up in the morning at the swap meet, the Roadium, back to the Roadium again, many years later, DJs would be there. And because Steve only had a certain amount of these 12 inches, like
Yes.
maybe he had 20, maybe he had 10,
Right.
And if you were the first 10 or 20 there, you could grab it,
Yes.
And they were actually spinning some of the stuff so you could hear it there too.
Yes.
You could hear the new stuff, which old DJ stores, you could always hear, whatever it was in
Right.
the store. And he did that there. So Dre was one of those DJs, and probably Quick too, probably. I don't remember if he was or not, but definitely, Dre. And Steve started making those mixtapes.
Yes, yes. That's what I want to get to. Do you remember who you met first? Did you meet Eric, Eazy-E, or Dre first, or did you meet them together?
I met Eric first.
Okay, and that was where? There?
At the Roadium.
At the Roadium.
At the Roadium.
Same place that I met him. I met him
Yeah.
in 1987. And I just happened to walk up, and that's where I met Dre for the first time. Easy and Jinx. Jinx was like 17 years old, and then from there, that's when I began to build a relationship. Later on, I come to find out that when I was going to Jinx's house, that's when Dre had just moved in, as they showed in the movie, and I was talking to Jinx not too long ago, and I asked him, man, what year was that? He goes, oh, that was 87. And I was like, that was the same damn year,
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, one thing that I've shared before about Dre, whenever I would go to Jinx's house, that I never saw him hanging around drinking a 40, watching TV. I always saw him either on the phone, people would come to see him, and he was always leaving. It was almost like he was always making moves, So now you meet Easy, Dre eventually. What was your relationship with them? Because obviously it was tight. Your name was on the albums, If any, did you have any type of input?
They, when talking to them, they knew that I was working in music and I was a buyer and stuff like that. But the way that really N.W.A. was presented to me, like I knew that he was doing the MC, he was MC on the tapes,
Right.
and there was a single that came out that Greg Mack was involved with radio and all that. But a little bit later, Priority Records, the owner, one of the owners, Mark Cerami, who I had somewhat of a relationship with because of, being a buyer at Warehouse, he would call me and ask me questions about certain things. And they were known, their claim to fame at that point, their big record, was a remake of I Heard It Through the Grapevine with the California Raisins. It was in a cartoon. It was in a commercial on TV.
Right.
And so they made a record of that. And then suddenly it was this big thing on the radio, kind of like, it was like a gimmick type thing,
Right,
but
right.
it started selling. So he had said to me, oh, we have this record. And he goes, but it kind of scares me to death. He goes, it's really kind of hardcore. He goes, I don't know if we should do this or whatever. And so he had asked me about it, and I already kind of knew about them. So I said, yes, absolutely, you should do this, and
Yes.
he was really nervous about it because it was a lot of controversy behind the content of the record
Yes,
and
yes.
stuff. So he was nervous as hell to put it out, but I was telling him, man, this is going to sell, it's going to be big, believe me,
Yes.
whatever. So he always says, when you talk to anybody about jobs or whatever on your resume, put down that you were the one that was responsible for bringing N.W.A. Well, I was not, but I was in his ear about it,
Yes.
signing it. I
Yes.
didn't bring it to him, but I was
Right.
definitely pushing because he goes, you really were a big influence on us signing it or whatever. So when the record came out, they put me in the thank yous. We used to go to the video shoots, you know, for the videos. My kids were little kids dancing in their videos. My partner and I were dancing in the back of some of those videos, you know,
Right.
and then later on they were going to the Snoop videos and all that. But yeah, we were very involved. And then my boys would sometimes watch Eric's kids because Derek, he was a real young boy at the time, and we became really close with Eric's woman too, Easy's woman at the time, Joyce.
Yes.
And she's on that record too, Straight Outta Compton.
Yes.
You know, Eric, your breath smells, you know, all that. So anyway, my kids would kind of watch his kids when he would go off. He had to do something, you know, God knows what. But.
You know, sometimes, Violet, I shamefully admit this, and I said this to my son. I said, because he asked me about a rapper. I call them social media or SoundCloud rappers today. Some of these guys I've never heard of, but talking to Greedy Greg, I asked him, how much do you think these guys are making a show? Oh, they're making about 50 grand. Now, I've never heard of these guys. And he says, they don't even have a song on the radio. Okay. So the other day, my son asked me, what do you think about this artist? And I said, mijo, I never heard of the dude. So he names another one. Never heard of the dude. Well, Daddy, you call yourself a DJ and a producer and a Roadium radio host, and you don't know none of these guys? And I was like, look, and this is the shameful part. I said, look, I on purpose choose not to listen to this new generation rap. Now, some people say, well, you're just a hater. No, I just choose not to. I tried, Violet. I really did. And maybe I'm just one of them old dudes that is just stuck back there because that music changed my life.
Yeah.
You know, and I saw hip hop going like this. And then when I thought it got to this new generation, people can differ. That's fine. I thought it went like this. I didn't like it. I still don't like this new generation of rap. I miss the old days. I really do. I love the 80s, you know. I have a Planet Rock story. I remember when I first got Planet Rock, I loved that damn song so damn much. My brother had one turntable, and I used to bump the shit out of that song, especially in the morning. I would get up on my butt huggers, play that song, and start practicing my popping moves in front of the mirror. I turn around and my mom's watching me there the whole time. So, yeah, that's my Planet Rock story. So I didn't do that anymore. Wow. But I just love that whole era of music. I love my favorite rapper. When people ask me, okay, Tone, who's your favorite rapper? So look, dude, you ain't got to twist my arm. I like KRS-One and I like Rakim. I say this, and I won't back down from it. I said, it doesn't get any more hip hop than those two guys. And of course, I love Public Enemy. You know, I was raised on East Coast rap. I love the N.W.As. I love all of these groups from out here. Ice-T's. One guy that nobody really mentions, I was raised also on King T, Mixmaster
so
Spade,
good.
Toddy T, and the producer DJ Pooh.
King T lived up in the same apartment building that Ice-T lived in, you know. So I was up there at their house, at their apartments sometimes. You know?
I remember when I first saw Ice-T. I don't know if you remember, it was called the LA Street Scene in the 80s. And I remember I kept looking at Ice-T like this, and he finally noticed. And I just kept looking at him, and he goes like, what's up? And I was like, hey, man, do you mind if I just like shake your hand? And he said, yeah, you a fan? And I was like, hell yeah, bro. It's like, you're like God, bro.
Yeah.
You know? And he was like, it's cool, man. It's cool, man. And I was just shaking his hand, but it meant everything to me. You know, when I met Dre, I was a fan of the World Class Wrecking Crew. To me, it just wasn't the Wrecking Crew. It was the World Class Wrecking Crew. And I didn't know that he was broke, you know, living at Jinx's house. But that didn't matter to me. I loved his talent.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what I looked up to, you know. Today, Violet, and again, this is just me, I just don't see it today. And that's why I kind of just choose to press mute on today's music. So, is there anything today that you like?
I hear certain people, there's a guy that I really like out of Canada named Johnny O'Rourke that I just love him so much, but he kind of has an old school sound to him a little bit with some of his music. But this guy, he can really spit. He tells a good story. Tech Nine is not new, but he still appeals to young kids, and I love Tech. I worked with Strange Music.
Yes, we're going to get into that.
Okay.
But I want to ask you about, it was just at the tip of my tongue. Years ago, you shared with me a story on how, the reason why I want you to share this story is because I believe that many people, it's a blessing to have today's technology. Believe me, I don't knock that. But I want people to learn from these old stories how you met MC Hammer. If you remember selling records out of the trunk of his car. Can you share that with us, please?
Yeah. I was at my office. We were in Torrance, California, and I got a call that this guy wanted to come up and meet me. So he came to my office, and he introduced himself as Kirk. He told me his name was Kirk. And so he told me he had some music and he wanted me to hear it. So I put on he had some 12-inch singles that he had brought. And I think it was Ring 'Em and whatever, The Thrill Is Gone. It used the bass of B.B. King's The Thrill Is Gone. And he played those two songs and I was like, okay, pretty good or whatever.
Yeah.
But it didn't like knock me out or anything, and he was from the Bay Area, from Oakland. And he told me that he was really starting to pop in the Bay and that sort of thing. So he wanted to sell some records to me out of his car. So I couldn't really do that. My company didn't allow me to really do that too much, but every once in a while I would beg and say, oh, let me just get some from this guy. He drove all the way or whatever. And so I got some from him, and I put it in the Bay Area, in those Bay Area stores, because I figured he's from the Bay.
Yes.
That's where it would sell. I used to always give everybody a shot, pretty much, because I always figured there's somewhere for everybody that this would sell.
Yes.
Even if it's in their hometown and their cousins and their homies and the mom's coming and buying it or something, it would sell there.
Yes.
So I would give people a shot and put it in their hometown, and then as it grew, I could move it around, to more stores. So with him, we put it in the Bay, and it started selling. So he started, and he owned Troop Clothing at the time. So he was already, involved with product, with gear. And he had been a bat boy or whatever, or water boy or whatever you call it, for the Oakland A's.
Okay.
So people really knew him. And the way that he got that is they saw him dancing in the parking lot of the games, and the owner caught the attention of the owner, and the owner said, oh my gosh, you look like Hammer, the baseball player or whatever.
Yeah.
So he goes, wow, we're going to take you in. And he took him under his wing, gave him that job as bat boy or whatever. And then he would dance and stuff, and people really loved him. He had a big personality.
Yes.
And when he was in my office, he had a huge personality. And that's the one thing that attracted me to him more than his music. He was very sure that he was going to make it, like very sure, like straight up, I'm going to be the biggest thing and all this. And I was like, calm down, boy. Do you know who comes in here? People that are the biggest thing, like, wow. So I started selling his records in the Bay, and then he started doing in-stores. And he would fly me in for the in-stores because he wanted me to be there and see it.
Wow.
So we go in, and maybe there's 50, 75 people. Do the in-store, he signs autographs, he's dancing in the store, a lot of commotion with his whole entourage and all that. Next time he does one, there's a few hundred people. Next time he does one, there's like 500 people. So pretty soon, we were the only chain that had this guy on our charts. We were selling it like crazy.
Wow.
So people were calling and saying, who is this guy that's ending up on your charts that we've never heard of before? I go, oh, he's just a guy from the Bay, MC Hammer. So this girl that worked with me at Warehouse, she went off to do A&R somewhere. She went to Hollywood Records.
Okay.
And that's where I had brought the high C to her when she was at Hollywood Records.
For those, Violet, that may not know what an A&R is, can you explain?
It's artist repertoire. So an A&R person will find an artist, listen to the music, bring it into the label to possibly get a deal. And then sometimes they'll be the one that'll be involved in kind of putting the project together too.
Yes, okay.
You know, like choosing songs, producers, things like that. So when she left Hollywood Records, she went over to, she went to Capitol Records first. That's right. So she goes over to Capitol Records and she called me up and she goes, hey, I'm looking for something that's really hot. And you always have hot new artists coming through your office. Do you got anything? I said, sure. I got this guy named MC Hammer. So she goes, really? She goes, what's going on with him? And I go, well, have you noticed our charts? I go, he's really selling. So she goes, send it to me. So I call him up and I was still calling him Kirk. You know, that's his middle name, by the way. So I said, Kirk, this lady at Capitol Records, she's asking for your music. Should I send it to her? He goes, yeah, we're about ready to want to do something big. Yeah, go ahead. So I send her the music. She listens to it. She calls me back and she says, wow. She goes, this is really not very good. And I was like, well, I said, you know what? I said, you might not like it.
Right.
And I said, I might not like all of it too. I go, but it's selling and it's striking a chord in the Bay Area. This guy's really moving units for us. So I said, and besides, you don't have to like it. I don't have to like it. It's for the audience, the customers.
Yes.
I said, if I only bought what I liked, there wouldn't be very many records coming through here. Believe me, you know, I said, I have to buy for the masses, you know?
Yes.
So she goes, well, let me give it to the urban department or whatever. I'll hand it over to them, you know? Because she said to me, honestly, she said, I want to sign the next Madonna, the next Bobby Brown. She goes, you got stuff like that, you know? And I was like, well, who wouldn't want to sign those big acts or whatever? But I said, this guy, I'm telling you, there's something about him. And when you meet him, he's so determined, you're going to see that this guy's going to make it. So she gave it over to the urban department. He ended up getting a meeting with them, and then he got a big deal. And I think it was like $2 million or something. It was a big deal that he got.
Wow.
So then, and he was very sure of himself in front of them too. He sold himself to them.
Of course,
I mean, he really sold it. And so he said, I'm going to be the biggest rapper of all time. And so they were kind of joking around with him, and they go, well, if that happens, we'll get you a brand new Testarossa car, you know? And he was like, I'm telling you, I'm going to be. And they go, we guarantee you that happens. Anyway, going forward, he calls me up and he says, hey, you want to come down to Capitol Records? They're going to present me with my Testarossa car today, because he had, you know, you can't touch this and all that. And that record just went crazy. And he was the first diamond artist, diamond rap artist.
Now explain diamond for those that may not know.
I'm sorry. So a platinum artist sells 1 million. A diamond artist sells 10 million records. So he was the first one that went to 10 million as a rap artist, you know. So
you know what's funny, Violet? That a lot of people say, oh, that fool's a sellout. That fool's whack. Somebody bought them records.
Oh, everybody was buying the records at the time, you know, and those videos that he was releasing was big time. Everybody was doing the dances.
Yes.
They were wearing he gave me kazals like he wore. I had the kazals. He was totally, you know, just always so good to me, you know, and he would invite me to his big shows. He would call me up and say, Violet, I just sold out the biggest arena in the world in Japan, and we sold out in 7 minutes, man. Stuff like that, you know. Or he would say, hey, I'm going to be with Michael Jackson. You know, we're going to be doing this thing where I'm going to be dancing against him for the glove. And I said, hold up. No, that is not what you should be doing. You know, I really was adamant about that, you know. And I think a lot of people around him told him the same thing. But, you know, he had big ambitions all the time, and he made it, man. He really made it.
Well, we're going to go to break, Violet. I mean, there's so much that we can talk about because you have so much history, and it's impossible to talk about all of it in one interview. Mm-hmm. But I tell these kids today that if you have a dream, to pursue it, you know, to pursue it, okay? So that's what I encourage everyone to pursue your dreams. Once again, we're going to go to a break. I'm just blown away from what I'm hearing today. It's a blessing and an honor to have Violet Brown here. Once again, when we come back, we're going to talk about the Roadium mixtape documentary that just dropped on Monday. We're going to talk a little bit more about Steve YANO. And for those that are trying to text me right now, listen to my music, I'm telling you again, go to Roadium Radio Gmail. All your comments, your content, your music, send it all there. I'm not going to read your messages. I'm not trying to be mean. So we'll be back after this with more Violet Brown. Call somebody.
Growing up in the 80s, DJing, turntablism, hip-hop in general was so competitive, that we were always looking to hear what other DJs were doing so we could kind of gauge where our level was. And that's when I heard of guys like Joe Cooley and Tony A, and seeing the stuff they were doing, the Roadium mixtapes, and Joe Cooley coming on KDAY. I was like, that's what I knew, like, that's how I gotta be. That's who I gotta, those were the guys I looked up to. Those were the guys that kind of set the mark for the DJ competitiveness in Los Angeles at that time. It never just ended with the DJing. It always would advance and, just into producing. And these are the machines Tascam actually made, 4 tracks and 8 tracks, which allow you to take a standard cassette, pop it in there, and then record, layering song after song. And that's the way guys like Tony A and Dr. J were able to make those Roadium tapes, was using a machine like a Tascam multi-track recorder.
Yeah, growing up in Southern California, we didn't have too many outlets as to where we can find new music. I mean, we had one radio station, that sounded really staticky. And, so, when mixtapes circulated, everyone was eager to see let's see what's on here. And when I finally ended up getting a hold of one of the Roadium mixtapes, it happened to be the 88 Boom and Bass, which I have a funny story about that. But yeah, Boom and Bass, 88 Boom and Bass, to me was just like groundbreaking. I mean, the way he was structuring those mixes, I mean, I didn't know. I mean, I was 12 years old or 14, whatever I was at the time. We had no internet, no Google, so we didn't know. I thought the Roadium was a nightclub based on what I was listening to on those tapes. I mean, it sounded like Tony had 4 or 6 turntables set up, and he had records queued up, and he had Eazy-E and Ice Cube coming through and doing intros or shouting them out. I mean, as a kid, that's what I was envisioning, because that's what, those tapes were painting a picture in my mind as to that's what I envisioned. So a few years later, when I came up on some money, I mean, the first major purchase I made as far as studying my Yamaha 4-track. Because literally, I mean, he had a whole series of tapes, and a lot of them had duplicate songs, but that didn't matter because each tape was presented and packaged and presented in a different fashion. So it's like watching 10 movies with the same actors, and you get something different out of each movie. I mean, that's how good these tapes were put together. And even back then, I mean, with the technology that was so limited, I mean, that took a lot of work. Funny story about 88 Boom and Bass though is one day I was getting ready to do a gig, and my friend came over to pick me up. He brought some guys who I didn't know who they were, but one of the guys gave me a tape. And again, back then, that's how stuff circulated. I mean, it's not like we had YouTube to find the next mix or anything like that. So I saw the tape. It had somebody's name, and it had their phone number. Fast forward, we get into the car. We're heading over to the gig. I had a couple drinks before I got into the car, and on my way to the gig, and I popped in the tape, and it was 88 Boom and Bass. I was like, this ain't Tony. I was like, this guy was flat out using Tony A's tape, and I don't know why he would do that, because Tony had, drops and references to his name all over that mix, but yet this guy was still using that tape and putting his name on it and using it as a promotional tool, which to this day that's still frowned upon. You don't take other people's work and capitalize on it yourself. I mean, do your own thing. I mean, I respect everyone's hustle, but you don't do that. And even back then, I was really upset to where I had the guy's phone number. I ended up calling him, and I gave him a piece of my mind. I mean, I was so livid that this guy must have thought that it was actually the Tony A calling him, telling him, giving him the business. But You know, so Tony, I know it's almost 30 years later. You know, I apologize if you ever got into an altercation or if anyone approached you about some threats that may or may have not been made over the phone a few years back. But, you know, it's an unwritten code, and out of the respect I had, you know, I felt a personal obligation from one DJ to another to take care of that for you, man.
I grew up in Mar Vista in the 70s and 80s, 90s. Right around 88, I got my first Radio Shack mixer and started learning how to DJ on some belt drive turntables. And one of my friend's brothers was a DJ already, and he made a copy of one of Tony A's tapes for us, and we just sat there and listened to it. How's he doing it? It's like 3 different beats going on at the same time with a different acapella. All the rappers that were big at the time, you know, needless to say N.W.A, but also like High C and those dudes, and Candyman would be on him on these tapes, doing alternate versions and personalized versions. It was just a shit, man. The composition was excellent on those tapes, and it really inspired me to step up my game. Thank you, Tony. Peace.
Hey, Tony, drop that. What bass?
I bet.
My name is the Croft, the C-R-A-W-F-O-R-D, the poet high C. Tony A, the wizard, just as cool as a blizzard. Sticking out his tongue, stabbing pussy like a lizard. Ooh, so sorry, homie, I didn't mean to say that. Steve is in the house. Come on, won't you play that funky dope beat? You know you gotta throw me some Stanless ass Croft coming straight from the Roadium.
You are now about to witness
Tony A. Get funky. Tell her where you from. You don't think I'm living, well, fuck you. Cool on Saturday night in LA. Yo, feeling kinda funky. Stop what you're doing, cause I'm about to ruin the image and the style that you used to. What the hell are you looking for? Can a young man make money anymore? Wear my jeans and like freaking on the floor? Or is it my job to make sure I'm poor? Disruption, disorder, nourish, not justify. Those that live at the FBI, look at mama's baby.
You could kind of tell it was like someone's garage, maybe. The little echo, you know what I mean? It wasn't completely perfect and polished yet. But that was the beauty of it, that it was so raw that we could feel that shit. And I would just play them shits and draw. That was my inspiration, my motivation to draw. So I always had to have some type of music. You know, if it wasn't the Dynamic Superiors or the Temporis or some funk playing, it was, you know, second to none. It was quick. It was the Penthouse Players, you know, High C. And Tony G was at that time was like a god too. You know what I'm saying? He was out there DJing Latin freestyle parties, and all the girls had their hairspray like a lion and shit, and hickeys on their neck. And man, pushing strollers, and we'd be like, ooh, look at, you know, these parties at La Casa and shit, you know what I'm saying, in downtown, and mini trucks and beds were folded in the air like transformers and shit in the boulevard, coming up and changing and flipping, and subwoofers beating before the person even hit the corner. You get goosebumps, like, damn. And Elko would bend the corner on Dayton's, and you were like, ooh, that fool's strapped right there. That fool gotta be strapped. Motherfucker had candy ribbons, little Willie ribbons from Compton on the side of his shit. Jerry curl dripping all over his shit. Bent over to the side, bumping that fucking Roadium shit. And he had a tape that only came from right there. And if you didn't know about that place, or you didn't live in that area, you didn't have that shit. So that's kind of one up that the Harbor area had on a lot of other people. Compton was next door, but that Harbor area was ended in Gardena. You know what I'm saying? So, man, those were great times, man.
A Roadium mixtape is like a kilo of cocaine. It's like a kilo of Amigo powder. You get that shit, you cut that motherfucker open, and you put it in your motherfucking CD player, and you start listening, and you be like, that's dope, shit, this is dope. How you do that? But really, a Roadium mixtape, bro, if you haven't experienced it, and you was in hip-hop back then, I don't know what the hell you was doing. You done fucked up. A Roadium mixtape is like, it's a kilo of cocaine. Music-wise, I'm saying, motherfucker.
Man, that's a little tough, but I'll tell you what, it was the best thing ever for me, man. It was just kind of like something you never heard about. And especially West Coast was not getting that shine at the time, you know? So you would go to this place and they would make a custom tape, like, you know, and not knowing what it was just the sound that came out of those tapes that, if I'm correct, you'd have to, like, I would be feeling for those things if it was monthly, if not sometimes bi-monthly, but a tape, it was just a mixture of the latest songs all mixed together. But the intro had like this crazy mix that I at the time I believed that it was like 4 turntables at the same time, but I was like, how the hell are they doing this? Like, was it Superman behind the turntables or something like that? But a mixtape was a real mixtape. It was actually a cassette too, you know, just for the record.
Yo, right about now, Dr. Dre is in effect. Cold tearing shit up with my man Steve at the Roadium swap meet. And we here to lay it on the line. All them sucker niggas out there claiming our tapes and shit, we just got one thing to say.
Look at you, boy, your ass is mine. Look at you, boy, your ass is mine. Look at you, boy, your ass is mine. Yeah! Now my name is Dr. Dre. I got the baby. Now my name is Dr. Dre. Now my name is Dr. Dre. Now my name is Dr. Dre. Went to a party in West LA. Wanna learn a new dance, that's what you say. Well, here's a new dance that can't be matched, so just step to the floor and do the cat. Here it come, here it come, here it kitty come. Here it come, here it come, here it kitty come.
Yo, everybody, thank you. Welcome back once again. It's I wish we had 3 more hours, you know, because there's so much that it's like being in a field and digging up treasures, talking to Violet Brown. That's the way I feel, and it's truly an honor and a pleasure to have her here. Without further ado, so that we don't waste any more time, we're going to jump right back into it. Now, Violet, you're working at the warehouse, the record store, the warehouse. How many, what would you say, chains, locations did you guys have at that time?
Gosh.
Because they were everywhere.
At one point, I think there were 3,000, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, it was, we constantly were growing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And you were, if you were the head buyer for hip hop?
Yeah, the urban buyer.
And
when I started, it was the black music buyer.
Wow.
Because it was called black music.
Right.
So, and then some magazines started changing and calling it urban music, and then it went to urban.
Okay. Now, how many years did you work there buying for them?
Ooh, as a buyer, maybe like 20 years or something like that. I was with them like 35 years, 30 some years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I remember I was in the studio with Steve YANO SKANLESS studio in the city of Alhambra, and we were talking, and then you asked me about a certain artist. I remember you asked me. I don't know if you do, but let me try to refresh your memory. You said, Tony, do you know a guy named Little Rob? That's what you had asked me, and I said, you know, Violet, I worked with him. I did like 2 songs on a Lawless album. I said, I don't really know him. She goes, maybe you could try to get a hold of him because I really sell a lot of his stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. I bring him up because the topic that comes up a lot today is about Chicano rap. Okay. When you were there at the warehouse, do you recall maybe possibly any Chicano rappers that were really selling during that time when you were there?
Well, Little Rob was selling to death. Capone was selling big time. Lighter Shade of Brown.
Okay.
There were several that started popping up, and but there were a lot of little guys too that were selling in pockets.
Okay.
You know, I bought all of that stuff, so we were like the only chain. Sometimes they would say, oh, the market share for your chain is like 90% market share. How is this happening? Wow. Because I was like the only one really buying it and putting it in the stores, you know?
Right.
And we even had, I started doing a promotion with the Pocos Paralocos
Yes.
radio show. And I even had a Pocos Paralocos section in my store where we would put the stuff up on an end cap and display it. And, you know, usually those displays, that was like Madonna and Queen and, you know, whoever else, you know,
Yes.
Michael Jackson. And here I had this end cap that was all Chicano rap, you know,
Right,
and
right.
so we were selling it pretty big.
There's 3 labels. I don't know if I want to call them labels or groups, if you will. There's High Power, which is, if I'm correct, Capone's label.
Yeah.
Then there's Low Profile from San Diego. They're the ones that had Little Rob.
Mhm.
And then there's Mr. D, Southland. I think they're called Southland Gangsters, or Southland Entertainment. I don't know if you remember any of those during that time, other than Little Rob, which you had mentioned.
You know what? I didn't deal much with labels back
Okay.
then. It was artists more
Artists,
with
okay.
Chicano rap, and it came from the distributors, whoever was bringing it in, and usually it was an independent distributor.
Okay.
You know, Southwest Wholesale or some indie distributor that would
Okay.
have them. I mean, it wasn't easy to find that stuff. You know,
Right,
it was
right.
at swap meets and it was in my stores. But because we were on SoundScan, you know, we were reporting the sales of this stuff, you know, from the barcode on there. So, you know, basically, I don't know who else was carrying. I don't think it was carried at very many other places.
Right. This is a question coming from me, and I've always wondered this. Other than possibly a Cypress Hill, a Fat Joe, Big Pun, and those guys, why do you believe about it? And maybe I'm wrong. Why hasn't there been a Chicano rapper that has ever made it, if you will, to the stature of a Snoop Dogg, Game, DJ Quick, you know?
Well, it was about radio back then, and they wouldn't let them in on radio. There was well, they weren't really making radio songs either. The first guy that really made a gigantic radio song, you know, was Kid Frost, you know, and I remember when that record came out, I kind of went crazy on that record too. I was like,
Yeah.
oh my God, this is too much. You know, like I remember getting the promo of it before it was out, taking it home, and I played it for a friend of mine who started Community Youth Gang Services, Marianne Diaz Pardon. And she was like, man, this song is incredible. And so I remember she said, I'm doing a concert in a park in Lenox. Do you think that he would come and play in the park? And I said, well, maybe. I go, but are you going to get this cleared in Lenox to have a free rap concert in the park, you know? And so she got it cleared, and everybody thought that there was going to be shootings there and craziness. He rocked it right there in the park in Lenox, and nobody bothered. There was no fights or anything. They were seeing like this. He was a rap star when that song came out, you know, so.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Now, I'm trying to pick my questions, Violet, because
Oh,
I
and
have
Mellow Man Ace too.
Mellow Man Ace was another huge one.
Oh my gosh.
Huge one. It seems like those two guys just were climbing up the charts.
And then he opened the door for Cypress Hill, really. You know, Mellow. So
yes.
Yeah.
And after that, I have to say, you know, Lighter Shade of Brown was climbing up the charts as well. Then Here Comes Proper Those. But I don't feel that it ever kicked open the doors after that.
Right.
I just felt like it just stayed, you know, I don't know.
Well, it's all about those catchy radio songs, and that's why Pitbull really came up to where he's at. You know, it's all about those crazy club bangers, you know, and radio songs.
True.
Yeah.
Today I talk to people, and here's what they tell me. Well, if I don't hear it in the strip club, it ain't gonna be banging, you know. So.
Yeah, strip clubs, they played stuff first, you know, a lot of times. Yeah.
Okay, now, I have to jump around because of time, because I'm going to have to invite you back, so there will be a Violet Part 2, okay? But now, in today's generation, we look at today's music, everything's streamed. You know, you look at social media, somebody will drop an album on all platforms. That's what you see, okay, on all platforms. From what you know of via down or streams, whether it be iTunes or Spotify, etc. Can a rapper today really make money off of streams?
You know, I they're not going to make a lot of money off streams, but if they're not making the money off streams, you got to look at it a different way. If they're getting a lot of streams, then that means people are finding out about them, which means they can go do shows, which means they can sell merch, you know. So not really making a ton of money off the streams, but the doors that it opens for them, you know, and then possibly getting the music licensed in films, you know, like all the movies you go see nowadays, all these rap songs are in movies, you know. So it opens the door big time for them, you know. And the great thing about streaming and the digital music now is, you know, although we don't have record stores anymore, it's basically everybody, if you have a phone in your pocket or if you have a computer, you have a record store because you can always find music. Back in the day, you couldn't get your music exposed in other countries so easily. You know, nowadays, you know, you can be anywhere and listen to music in another country or hear a guy in, you know, another country, another part of the US or whatever. So although there's no record stores, it's like 24/7 record stores. As long as you have that phone or whatever, you can always find new music, you know. So it's pretty easy nowadays to...
Here's a DJ question, okay? I was talking to Greedy Greg, okay, a couple of days ago, and he tells me, you know what I read the other day, Tone? He said that this was for 2019, and I guess this must have been an old issue, that vinyl was going to outsell CDs this year, okay? Of course, there's not really too much vinyl or CDs out, but that was the stat, okay? And I said, really? And he goes, yes. Now, do you think, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed, do you think that vinyl records will ever make a comeback, or do you think that's a thing of the past?
Well, everybody talks like it's making a comeback now, but, and you see them in some weird stores, Urban Outfitters and clothing stores will have a little vinyl section or whatever. But, you know, it's not selling like CDs used to sell, you know, where a whole skid of product would come in on a pallet, you know, and just blow off like that. It's not like that, you know. So I don't know. It seems like it's kind of peaked maybe again. But I don't know, you know. Like when I was spinning, I only spun vinyl, and I love vinyl so much, you know. But, you know, it's so much easier it was so much easier with CDs. And then of course now you have a DJ that shows up and goes, oh, I'm going to do this club tonight, here's my phone or here's my laptop, and that's it. You know,
you're right Now here's a tough one, maybe a tough one, maybe not. Is there an artist today, a rap artist today, that you could think of that will still be relevant or will still be remembered 25 years from now?
Well, I think the N.W.A. might. You know?
No, I'm talking about a new rapper.
Oh, a new rap artist
today.
Maybe Kendrick Lamar. Maybe
that's what I was thinking about.
You know, just because of the fame, like winning the awards that he's won and all that, and his records are great. I mean, you know, so maybe him. You know, I don't know, like. I can't really say. It's going to be so hard because now kids that are buying rappers, are buying new music, they know the songs. They don't really identify so much with the artist too much. It's always about songs because they have no, their attention span is like this, you know, they're on to the next so fast. So it's kind of hard for a rapper to come out and become a big star now, you know.
I was blown away by this. I want to say almost 2 years ago, I DJ'd a private party, and the guy who hired me, I didn't want to do it. And I said, look, I don't DJ private parties no more. I don't DJ house party no more. I'll DJ nightclubs and maybe concerts. That's it. You know, I'm that kind of DJ. And he offered me so much money, so I said yes, and I took it. And I remember he just said, look, in the very beginning, the first hour, just play some old school shit. That's what he said. I said, all right, cool, whatever. So I played everything, like from Madonna to Janet Jackson, Sheila E., you know. And then later on during the night, I kind of mixed in a Britney Spears song because it was that type of crowd, okay?
Yeah.
This is about 2 years ago. Some girl comes up to me. She says, "Oh, could you not play so much old school anymore?" It's weird how that they considered, or she did, a Britney Spears song like old school. And I'm thinking, it's wild that this generation sees a Britney Spears like an old school.
Mhm.
You know, to me, when he told me old school, the first thing that came to my mind was like, you know, Humpty Dance, Fly
Well,
Girl.
You know, yeah, now Britney is their mom's music, you know.
Yeah.
Kids, you know,
Right.
they're on to Billie Eilish and stuff like that, you know. So, yeah.
Okay. Now, back to the Roadium swap meet. When you first heard my mixtapes, because I met you through Steve,
Mhm.
and every time I saw you at the swap meet, I always remember that you were always so kind to me. You would always talk to me, and you would always pat me in the back and say, "Tony, when you blow up, are you still going to be humble?" And I was like, "Vale, I will never change." And we're still here today.
And you haven't changed.
I'm thankful for that, you know, and I'm thankful for your friendship. And when you used to leave, I used to always tell Steve, "Man, that's a nice lady. Who is that?" You know, and he goes like, "You want to be friends with her?" And I was like, "That's a nice lady." But I'm glad I met you as the nice lady from the Roadium and not for what you did, because I don't like when people try to befriend people because of who they are.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
You know, and I'm sure you've had that.
Oh, my gosh, yeah.
You know.
People would show up in my office. Friends of mine would say, or people I knew in the business, "Oh, I'm going to drop by and see you today." They would show up in my office with somebody with them all the time. There would
Yeah.
always be somebody with them. And acting like I didn't know what was up. I knew that they were getting paid to bring that person in front of me, which was ridiculous because anybody could have come and seen me for free. That person could have called me up
Yeah.
and said, "Hey, I want to come up and meet you," and they would have a meeting with me, because many artists did that. That's how I met Tech Nine and Travis from Strange Music. They just came to see
Right.
me at the office. A lot of big artists, you know, but I would always say to them, you know, I would have the meeting, and then I would say, "You know what?" You know, privately with them, I'd say, "I know what's up. How much money did you get from this person to come and have this meeting today?" What? No. And I said, "Come on." You know, every time you come here, you got somebody and they just happen to have some new project or something. I'd say, "Don't do that. You know,
Right.
don't be taking money. Just bring them up here, but don't take money from them, or else I'm going to start calling you out in front of these people."
Good.
You know,
Good. That's
so
good.
yeah.
It reminds me of me. Now, when was it, or how did it come about that Steve started telling you about what we were doing as far as the "I'm Not Your Puppet" was on a mixtape, and then Sitting in the Park, because you had played a major role in us getting our record deal with Hollywood Records.
Mhm.
How did that come about? Did he ever say, you know, we're working on something, or?
Yeah, and I was hearing the stuff, you know, on
Right.
the tapes, you
Okay.
know, and it sounded great. You know, Crawford sounded a lot like Easy, you know.
A lot of
so
people said that.
were thinking it was Easy-E for a minute, especially since Easy was involved with those, you know. But then when you met Crawford and you heard him talk, he just sounded like Eric, you know.
Right.
But he was good, you know, and you were putting together really good tracks for him, you know. And the same girl that was over at Capitol Records, that the Hammer situation,
Right.
had gone over to do A&R for Hollywood Records. Hollywood Records was actually owned by Disney. I worked for them for a while, and my check had a little Mickey Mouse on it, you know. So she said she was looking for some rap music and all that. Did I know of anything again, you know? And she actually tried to hire me to do head of urban A&R at Hollywood Records. And so that's kind of where the conversation came up about Steve and, you know, you guys. So she heard it, and because she probably loved it a lot because it did sound like Eric, you know?
Right.
So, but she was like, "Man, this stuff is really, it's kind of nasty. You know, I don't know if Disney's going to go for it, but you know what? Everything's nasty nowadays. We got to like do it. We got to do it, you know?" So I remember her talking to me and saying, "Okay, everything's cool except for they have to now change the lyrics. They want the lyrics changed." And what had happened is, I think that you guys changed the lyrics on the lyric sheet
On
that
paper.
you handed in on paper, but didn't really change it. And the record came out.
Yes.
Like the bosses, the big people didn't listen
Right.
to this and hear the content. You
Right.
know, you guys got away with it, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
And, you know, you guys just started blowing up over there, you know, at Hollywood. I was so excited for all of you and for Steve and
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. No, you know what? It's and I'm thankful that you were a part of it. You know, one thing that I always told Steve, you know what? Violet is just one of those friends that you meet once in a lifetime. And I truly, truly mean that, because even, like I said, I was 19 years old. I'm 51 years old now. And I can still pick up the phone and call you to say, how you doing?
Yeah.
You know, and that's an awesome, awesome friendship, if you will. You know, now, you're wearing an N.W.A. sweater. And a couple of times I looked at Eric, Easy, okay? There's two artists that when they passed, I'll be honest, it really, really did hurt me.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to ask you, if you remember or do you recall where you were when you first heard that Eazy-E had passed away?
Yeah, I was in Vegas for my birthday. It was March 26th, my birthday, and he died.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
It was so sad to me, you know,
Yes.
because we knew that he was sick,
Right.
but we didn't know, like, sick, like, gonna die, you know, right now or whatever. You know, we heard it was bad or
Yeah.
whatever. But, yeah, that was tough.
Yeah, it was really
Hard.
tough. I remember, and I shared this story on a previous show, that we had just pulled up to Steve's studio, and they had announced it, that Theo had announced it, and then he plays Boys in the Hood.
Yeah.
And I told my friend who was driving, just go inside. And I'll be honest, I really did cry, because
Yeah.
I remember him walking through my living room, into my room, grabbing a crate of records, you know, flipping it up, and then writing 88 Boom and Bass, Get Busy with Easy and Tony A on the 12 Techniques. It's a Steal, and Steve is promoting them. Dope ass shit by the Wizard at the Roadium. And I still see him,
Yeah.
you know, and then he says it, and then he did a couple of other tapes. And, you know,
I mean, through the years, you know, I was there for all his videos, and I would take a picture with him all the time. So I have so many different pictures with him. We went to Disneyland with him one time, and I remember I have a picture of him with the Keystone Cop from Disneyland. And he had his video camera that day, and anybody that was coming up and asking for his autograph, which he loved that. He was like the Pied Piper, you know.
Yes.
2 or 3 kids would notice him. Then there's like 50 kids following us around Disneyland, and he loved that, you know. And anybody that would ask him for a picture or whatever, he would say, okay, let me get you on my video. So he was taking videos that day. And this cop, the Keystone Cop, comes by, and I said, hey, you should take your picture with him. And he goes, why do I want to get my picture with him? And I said, Keystone Cop, fuck the police. You need your picture with him. And so he went up, and he goes, yeah. And he goes, hey, let's take a picture. And so he was like this. So I got that picture of him
Wow,
at Disneyland.
wow.
And that videotape was, he had a Aerostar van, and somebody broke in and stole the camera from that whole day and everything. But that was for one of his kids' birthday that we were there.
And I remember we shared a story together on, I think it was your birthday at the Anaheim Celebrity Theater.
Yep.
Those were awesome ass shows there.
That was so good, man. They said, we're going to have a birthday party for you at the show. And it was at in Orange
Anaheim,
County.
yes.
And backstage, they had a bunch of chicken. They had a cake and all that. And I guess Layla was backstage, their security guy, and while the show was going on, he was just grubbing on all the food. So I think things were mostly gone when it was over with.
Yeah.
But it was so cool because they were shouting out happy birthday to me from the stage, you know, N.W.A. shouting me out, oh,
Right.
it's Violet's birthday party tonight and all this stuff. So it made me feel really good, you know.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
awesome. You know, what made that stage so unique, because it was right in the middle of the audience. You had to run through the audience, so the fans actually got to touch the artist.
Yep.
And the stage would turn around real slow.
Yeah.
Those
In the
were
round.
Awesome. The day that I went, it was actually the first time I actually ever met Jerry. And I tripped out how tall he was. You know,
Yeah.
Jerry was a tall dude, black trench coat. You know, he opened the door, it's time to go.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember when they went up there and it was Ren and Dre, and then Cube came out, and then finally Easy came out, and the whole crowd was yelling, "We want Easy!" It was electric.
It was electric.
It was just amazing. I remember the DOC performed there that day. He only had a single out, the Funky Enough. Then I remember King T was performing. He had a spade, so I got to see Mixmaster Spade live on stage. Pooh was on the drum, and DJ Aladdin was on the turntables cutting it up. N.W.A came next, and then Ice-T came on pushing his album Power.
Yeah.
That was just...
Yeah.
That could have been a pay-per-view show.
Oh, yeah. And I used to always tell them, we need to do these on pay-per-view, because venues started not wanting to do rap shows.
Right.
So I used to say, pay-per-view, pay-per-view, and they wouldn't listen to me. And I was like, kept shouting, we got to do pay-per-view. I said, why wouldn't you? And they were afraid, or they thought people wouldn't watch. And I said, are you kidding? Some kid in Idaho, they will never see this concert, but they could turn it on their TV in their house and watch it. I'm telling you, it would be huge, pay-per-view. But they never wanted to do that, you know?
Again, Violet, I know we're going to have to do another one because there's just so much to cover. I want to read something, maybe one or two quotes. This was a book, or should I say a magazine, Urban Network Warehouse magazine that was given, and it says, "A salute to Violet Brown." And this was a magazine that was given a tribute to you for working there. And there's just so many pictures and so many quotes of people that paying homage to Violet Brown. Like, I'll just read one or two. And this is from Clive Davis, CEO, J Records. And it says, Violet has had a special influence on today's music industry throughout her 25 years. Her great love for music and her talented artists have truly established her as a major tastemaker. She has had my ear, and I've always been eager for her input, reaction, and advice. I salute her for much deserved tribute, and I wish her much joy, fulfillment for the futures. Clive Davis. Let me turn the page here, not to take too much time, but let me read one from Tina Marie, Lady T. I am pleased to be giving you a quote regarding Violet. I feel she is one of the most important people in the industry. Her main attribute is her integrity. It carries over in all that she does at work with friends. If more people were like her, the industry would be a better place. Violet is dear to me, and I congratulate her on her past, present, and future accomplishments. Thanks for being a friend, Lady T. And I can keep going on. There's E40 quotes. There's Busta Rhymes. There's Warren G quotes. There's Mac 10 quotes. And again,
I think there's Will I Am in there.
Yes.
I met him when he was 15, and
And I want to show the picture, if possible, of the picture that you took with Aaliyah. Here it is right here. And how long before was it?
That was about a week before she was killed.
Okay. Okay. And once again, this is a collector's edition, and she's not selling it or giving it away. I don't even have it, but this will probably be one day in a museum, hip hop museum. So, once again, Violet, it's been a truly honor and a pleasure to have you here. You know, I remember you introducing me to Tina Marie, and to me, that was one of the highlights of my career, to be able to work with her in the studio. Usually when we mic up a rapper, we usually tell him to go ahead and spit, man. Let us get some levels.
Yeah.
We're compressing, adding a little EQ, whatever. It was hard for me to do that for her, because when she started singing and warming up, I was just listening, and I was telling people, do you hear that? Do you hear that? Oh my God. I'm not gonna lie to you. She must have been in there for at least 30 minutes warming up. Are you guys ready? And we're thinking to ourselves, shit, we were done, Wow. But these were just all warm-ups. Yeah. And she goes, no, I'm not ready yet. And I was like, okay, let us know when you're ready. Okay, let me have a little bit more tea. She had some tea. let's go. But to me, it was just like a freaking concert.
That night that we were there, we were in the parking lot of that studio, and I remember it was really like late, like 1, 2 in the morning, something like that. And we were sitting outside while you guys were doing something in there, and we were in the car, and Tina was in the back seat of our car, and I'm in the passenger seat, and Carla's in the driver's seat, my partner. And one of Tina's songs came on the radio, because it was like a, you know, some quiet storm type music or whatever, and her song came on the radio, and I was like, oh my god, Tina's song is on the radio, how weird. And then Tina comes up on the back of the seat like this, leans forward, and Carla's here, I'm there, and she starts singing along with her record on the radio, and my ears like right here, right? And I was like, is this really happening, that she is singing with her song on the radio? And it was just so beautiful. And yeah, she's just so beautiful.
Yes.
She was a beautiful person. She used to go sing happy birthday for my friends, you know, my friend's having a birthday. She want me to go sing happy birthday? And then she would go over there, sing happy birthday, and then go off about her business. She was just so cool.
You know, one thing that really stood out to me about her, other than her incredible voice, when I first met her, I didn't realize how tiny she was. Now, I know I'm a tall guy.
Really tiny.
But when I saw her, I couldn't believe it, that such a powerful voice came out of that tiny woman.
Yeah.
You know, amazing, amazing. She'll never be forgotten. So once again, thank you for introducing me to her, you know, for that awesome experience. But we run out of time. I want to say, Violet, that I would love to bring you back. So sometime next year, we'll have to invite you back to have a Violet Part 2.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of stuff I could say, a whole lot more. So
yes, but we will. And that was just to, you know how they said, to wet your lips, wet your ears, okay? For you guys to tune in to Roadium Radio. We will have Violet back, and there's a lot more stories to share. But once again, I want to remind you that the Roadium Mixtape DOCUMIXERY dropped on Monday. You can order it at DOCUMIXERY.com. And this is in memory of Steve YANO, who was a huge cornerstone to West Coast hip hop. He's a major contributor. So I hope that you guys go and you guys support it and learn some West Coast hip hop history. Once again, Roadium Radio Gmail. If you guys have anybody you guys want to invite, any music, any questions, send them there. Please do not DM me or do not message me. Send them all to the email, roadiumradio@gmail.com. Other than that, our next guest will be, you have to look on my Facebook and on my Instagram to find out tomorrow morning who my next guest is. Hilarious dude. You don't want to miss it. The dude is hilarious. I love him. We've been friends for the longest time, and I guarantee you he'll make you guys laugh, especially with his face. Okay, you'll know what I mean when you see the trailer tomorrow for Roadium Radio next week. So once again, Violet, is there anything, any shout outs, anything you would like to say to anyone? You can say it now. And
yeah, I want to shout out my friends over at No Limit Sports and Fitness. That's a gym in Signal Hill. And I've been hanging with them for the last few years, along with doing music, but I've enjoyed working in the fitness industry too. So I want to give a shout out to all of them.
Yes. And once again, there's so much that some people can, message me. How come you didn't ask this? How come you? Because I had so much to ask. I could not have fit it in these 2-hour interview. So once again, she will be back. And if you have any questions for her next time, email them, and I will do my best to get those questions to her. So once again, thank everybody for tuning in. I like to give credit where credit is due. Once again, I'd like to thank John Elkins, John motherfucking Elkins, for this.
Man.
Because if it wasn't for him, this wouldn't be made possible, along with DG, Daniel Jones, DG Media Clips, Boomer did it, Remedy Yard, Roger Mera, Roger Live, Wiz One, Kerry Fujita, South Bay Drones. This is my team. These are the people that help me bring this to fruition. So once again, I'd like to thank them. Epidemic for rolling through. Sandy Pants and my boy Misfit is in the building. So much love, much respect to them. And thank everybody for tuning in. And we'll see you guys next week. Thank you, Violet, once again.
Yeah.
Hey, what you think of that Tony A mixtape?
Oh, that Tony A mixtape, the Roadium tape? No, that's back in the days. That's when Cube and them got started. The first time I ever heard of High C. Boy, busting fresh ass raps, freestyle shit. That's back in the days.
Alright, my name is Hugo Garcia. I'm gonna tell you about the first time I ever heard the Tony A 88 boom and bass. I already knew about Tony A from the High C albums, and I always heard about the mixtapes. I had actually heard a little bit of one that he did with High C, but it was real bad quality and just a really small part of it. It was probably 1994 or 95. I was in ROP class. It was to learn how to weld. It was a welding ROP class in Ontario High School, Ontario, California. There was this guy that was in the class, and he was from Fontana, California. I'll never forget that. And he actually had a copy of, to make a long story short, he had a copy of the 88 boom and bass, and he let me borrow it, dubbed it, and man, and I could tell it was an original. It looked like a copy from a copy of a copy, who knows. And this was already 94, 95. But I'll tell you what, man, when I heard that, it just blew my mind. I remember me and my friend Richard, we were driving around just hearing it, and wow, it just blew my mind. And I mean, first you had Easy on the intro. That was amazing. Then you had Ice Cube freestyling over the Public Enemy beat. I think JJ Fad and Tone Loc were also on the tape. So I was just like, wow, this is just incredible. And that's really it. I mean, oh yeah, next time I'm in LA, I'm gonna go down to Amoeba and pick up the 88 boom and bass and whatever else Tony has put out, because I mean, it's like a time machine. It's like you get in, throw that tape in, and all of a sudden you're in a different part. And the 88 boom and bass, if I were to compare it to something, was pretty much the same time I heard Boys in the Hood, Easy. That was another life-changing moment where I'm just like, wow, you know. So that's it.
Tony A the Wizard. I met Tony in about 1986 through a mutual friend of ours who started out as my DJ. Me and Tony started clicking after we plugged at a little DJ thing he was doing. He was set up all his equipment outside of his house over by my school and just started mixing. No reason other than to get down. So at that point, you know, I grabbed a mic, did my little thing. He did his little scratching and stuff. It was a dope combination. So a little bit after that, he had hooked up with Steve over at the Roadium. And the original plan was for me to go ahead and drop some bars on one of his mixes. But, you know, Steve, I'm assuming, wanted to only use, you know, big name artists at the time like N.W.A and things like that. So I wasn't mad at him. But it was in that rhyme where Tony got the moniker The Wizard. It was something like, hands so fast they look like a blizzard, causing magic on the tables, you can call him a wizard, you know. It was the 80s. That was a solid rhyme at the time. Get off my ass. Yo, what a lot of people might not know about Tony, super humble cat. I've seen him with some of my other big name homeboys who DJ like Joe Cooley and things like that, and he's never been the cocky, overconfident type. Being one of the best DJs in the South Bay, that always kind of shocked me because personally, I didn't think nobody can fuck with him. You know, but that's just me.
Get you, Dre.
Just do 1 2 1 2. Right about now, Eazy-E and Dr. Dre's in the motherfucking house.
Times are getting crazy, it's really hard to choose it. The Roadium's a spot to get funky, fresh music. Easy motherfucking E and my homeboy Dr. Dre. MC Ren is in effect, and you know we don't play. The Roadium is hitting, but you know you can't leave until you get a deaf-ass tape from Steve. Oh Steve, oh Steve, oh Steve, just give me just one more tape. Oh Steve, oh Steve, oh Steve, just give me just one more tape. Oh Steve, oh Steve, oh Steve, just give me just one more tape. Oh Steve, oh Steve, oh Steve, just give me just one more tape.
Yeah, man,